On Wednesdays at 7, sharp as can be, blue gals calling, come knit with me.
Hi there, everybody. Happy last day of winter. And it is windy and storming here tonight. So I'm hoping I won't have a lot of sound interference with the wind. It's really kicking up here in south central Illinois, as they say. Let's talk about past knitting, present knitting, and future knitting. I did finish, I've been doing blankets for Lent, and I did finish the Feather and Fan baby blanket. It's baby acrylic. This was 30-year-old yarn that someone had started a Feather and Fan. Someone at my church had started a Feather and Fan blanket on size 7 needles with baby yarn held double, and it was just way too tight. So I went up, ripped it all out, went up to size 10 needles, and this is very flowy and lovely and done. So very happy with that. Middle child now wants their own Feather and Fan blanket in a different color. And I don't blame them. This color is a little baby oriented. But it's done. And I'm going to take it to church next Tuesday as a stitch and go meeting and find out if I can make a contribution and hold on to this one. Or if the person that gave me the yarn wants it, I will give it to them. But if not, then I'd like to hold on to it for a future gift. And then I did go ahead and take these squares that were donated also to Stitch and Go. There were 8 of them and 1 partial. And so I finished the partial one and sewed together. You probably saw the partial one I did because it's an oddball. It really doesn't look the same. But I can see it. But I put it off center so that it's right there. It's right there by my face is the oddball where I just use different stitches. But in any event, I just sewed the 9 squares together and put a border around it. It's just a little, I would say 30-inch, maybe 28-inch car seat blanket. And that was something I really wanted to talk about today, about when you make baby blankets, you don't have to make them big. Really, a little one that will cover them in a car seat is lovely and gets a lot of use. And that's what you want. And I also, maybe I've mentioned this before, but I have a rule. When I give away a baby blanket, I tell the parents that Granny Franny has a rule. And the rule is that if you receive a Granny Franny blanket, that blanket must, in the first year, wind up on the floor of the car with a juice box and a French fry stuck to it. I really don't want these treated as precious. And this one, like I said, I didn't make these squares except to finish the one. And I just sewed them together and finished it. So this will make a nice giveaway for our church gives away diapers several times a year. And when we do that, if there are blankets, we also offer those. And having a nice car seat blanket, it's likely that the kid is in the car when they drive up. It's a drive up to the church portico to get your diapers. And there's this circle of cars that goes around. And we offer other things in addition to diapers at the time. So this will probably go in that pile. And then I did, because I always kind of have a pair of socks around to do. I finished the Frankenstein socks, I call them, because they're a hot mess. This is Cranbox yarn, and in Winter Flowers is the colorway. And I just started knitting these and realized once I got done with the heel on the first one that there's actually a wide stripe to do the heel. I should have gone down to that stripe and done the heel there. And I said, screw it. And then I thought they were too big and too slouchy. So I ribbed the top of the foot. And so they are absolute Frankenstein socks. But I know a college student that will wear them. So That's fine. And these are pair 3 for 2025. They are not part of my monthly sock knitting. I've had these on the needle since maybe November of last year. They're just a carry around. I have a little makeup bag, one of those giveaway makeup bags this one's from Estee Lauder that I care is big enough for a sock, and you can get these at the thrift store. Makeup bags of this size are great for a pair of socks. And I have scissors and needles and measuring tape and enough yarn to make a pair of socks and the sock needles. And it just goes with my purse. So what's in there now is March, the sock for March. So the second sock for March. And that is future knitting, because I just got the second sock on the needle. These are Sporty stripes, and this is an earth sock set in the colorway Hanukkah, but blue and white is my college and high school colors. So that's why I got this one. And next week, starting Monday, the 24th, is Knit a Second Sock Week. So we do this, and this is probably the most successful thing I've done from the standpoint of participation from this knitting podcast. People like knowing that at the end of the month, there's a time to knit a second sock. And I always do that. I am now in the habit of waiting until the end of the month. I try to finish that first sock pretty quickly at the beginning of the month, and then work on other things and zoom along at the end of the month to finish the second one. So it's motivating. And I finish a pair of socks a month for the Grocery Girls sock bash knit along. And I've been doing that. I did that last year from May until December, and now I'm starting again. And so that's the theme is Sporty stripes for March, and the theme for April is a designer you haven't knit before. And I am at long last knitting the Skype socks, SKYP, which is a very popular pattern. It ranks right up there with Hermione's favorite socks and some other patterns. The Yarn Harlots, actually, this is the Yarn Harlot recipe, this one. But I'm going to finally get around to knitting the Skype socks, and I'm going to be knitting them in this opal rainforest. This is in the colorway Congo Sally, and Congo Sally is that parrot. And this is purple and green. So I'll be knitting in April, starting April 1st, I'll be knitting these striped socks in the Skype sock pattern. And so that's one thing of future knitting. And then, like I said, I'm knitting blankets for Lent, and I'm knitting the socks. And I am done with 2 of the blankets. And so now I am knitting, this one is mine. This is one that I started and has been sitting in a bag in my closet for a long time. It is by Kay Gardner of, used to be Mason Dixon Knitting. It's now Modern Daily Knitting. And it is called what is it called? The pattern over here. Hold on a minute. It's like the mitered crosses. That's it. Mitered cross blanket. I have 3 of them here. I have another one that's just about done. And then I have another one started. So I need to make 10 of these 13-inch squares, and then I will sew them together and put some border on the sides where it's a row of 3, a row of 2, a row of 3, a row of 2, and then the rows of 2 have wider borders, so they're offset. I put this in the closet because I started to not like it. And I wasn't sure about this dark purple stripe that shows up every once in a while. This is like a Vanna's Choice acrylic. And this is Karen Cake Baby Cakes, which is so soft, this beige. But when I took it out of, and I thought, probably going to frog this. But when I took it out and looked at it and started knitting that border again, I really like it. And it's a nice neutral, but it's still colorful. And I've learned to just really like it. And I'm excited about finishing this. So Lent runs through April 20th, Easter. And so I'll be working on this one through that time. And then those squares blanket, the pink and blue and green, pink and blue and yellow little squares blanket came with a ton of yarn, just massive amounts. And so in addition to those 8 squares and a partial, there was this piece of just double crochet in there. And I thought about, and it's double crochet through the back loop, and whoever did it is right-handed, and also I think went backwards through the back loop. And I just couldn't duplicate it. I tried. And so I started to frog this and rip it out, and I started crocheting a corner to corner blanket. And so this goes very fast. And I've made one of these in bulky yarn over Christmas, over December. This is on a D hook, an F hook. This is a pretty small hook, but it's turning out great, and it goes very fast. And I pulled out a good chunk of this double crochet piece, and then I realized, well, this is wide enough for a scarf. I think I'll just hold on to this since it's finished. I'll work in the ends, and then I'm going to put this and a ball. I mean, I've got 3 big balls of this. Here is a full ball of Bernat Baby Sport. I've got 3 of these. Somebody really overestimated the amount of yarn they were going to need to do things. So I'm going to put some of that in a bag and with this, and then I'm going to make a hat before Christmas and donate that to, we have what they call a smitten tree, which is people donate hats and gloves, and a lot of people donate handmade hats, crocheted and knit, to donate to the needy. So I will make a matching hat for this and then donate that at Christmas. And this blanket will get done this month. I mean, this will get done before Easter, and along with the miter crosses blanket. So those are my 2 miter crosses, and this crochet corner to corner are my goals before April 20th. I'm going to try to finish both of those, plus finish the second sock on this one. And by April 20th, I will have finished the first sock for April. And then on Easter Sunday, I'm going to cast on the Fuck Trump hat. And I showed this to you last week, but I wanted to tell you a couple things. One is, yes, I'm starting my hat on Easter on April 20th, but whenever you need to start it. I'm not an autocrat. So whenever you want to start this, it's the Eat the Rich hat, by the way. And I talk about this extensively on last week's podcast, so I won't repeat myself. But what I did want to say is there is an easier pattern. If this is too much for you, there is a hat that has this chart, free pattern that has this chart. So you can just do a simple gray hat and use this and either embroider this on or knit it in. So I'll link that below. I'll try to find it and link it below. I'm not going to put this on the front of my YouTube. I promise you. YouTube would flag me for that. But this chart, if like I said, this is a detailed, this whole hat really. Free pattern is beautiful, and I'm very grateful. Lanja Cohn Engheim designed this and put it up for free in February. Very grateful that she did this. It's fabulous, but it may be too much for some knitters. So this other one is available. And here's the chart, Anyway, I talked all about that last week. So April 20th is when I'm starting mine. If you mentally need to start yours sooner, and some people have told me they do, go for it. I also wanted to show you guys, like I was saying, I think sometimes we make baby blankets too big. This is a new one that just came out this morning from Pearl Soho. I'm on their mailing list, and you should be too. I think they have great free patterns. This is called the Good Morning Blanket, perfect for Pride. It is by Laura Ferguson for Pearl Soho. It is knit in Pearl Soho Cotton Chirp, which is an unmercerized cotton. They sell the colors in a bundle, and then you have to buy a 100-gram ball of the white to go with it. And the total cost for yarn, if you use the Pearl Soho yarn to knit this, is $144. To get a blanket that looks just like that, which that's a lot to me. That's a lot, but some people want what they see in the picture, and that's what you'll have. I have a feeling. The first concern I had with this was how quickly will this fade in the wash, because if you're going to make it for a child. If you're going to make it for a wall hanging, you have nothing to worry about. But if you're going to make it for a child, it's going to need to be washed. And having that big white square there, that's going to get dingy, and you're going to need to wash it. So, but it's Pima cotton. I think it's probably pretty color fast. I think it's as color fast as, embroidery floss, for instance. It's unmercerized. And then it comes in two sizes. This size is the small throw, which is only 30 1/4 inches by 40 1/2 inches. And you can see it will cover a person sitting in a chair. That's an adult holding up the blanket. The crib size is 26 1/2 inches by 31 1/4 inches. So again, not big. And that gets me to, my personal lesson for myself for today, which is on Sunday this week, my husband and I woke up, and the weather has just been so weird. It's gone from 70 down to 30 and back up and down. And that's just spring in the Midwest. But Sunday morning, it was cold, and we discovered our furnace wasn't working. And we went to church and came back, and furnace wasn't working. We did everything we could do ourselves, looking at YouTube, checking the furnace, doing all the diagnoses that we could do. And furnaces these days our furnace in particular will flash a code when you turn it on. If you take the doors off and you turn it on, there's a little box. If something's wrong, it gives you a code. And the code that was on our furnace was F8. And F8 means call a technician. So you look it up and it's like, oh, okay. So we went without heat on Sunday. To make a long story short, we wound up spending the day under the covers in bed watching all 8 episodes of Paradise on Hulu, which I can recommend. It could have been 2 episodes shorter than it was. I understand why it had to be 8 episodes. But when your furnace is out and you just have to sit in a room with a space heater and be under the blankets all day, it's good. I thought it was good. But I spent the whole day working on this blanket. And I did not start this. I've only knit about 3 inches of this, and the rest is from someone else. It's very difficult to show it to you, but it is a basket weave, a long basket weave knit on size 4 needles with baby yarn, acrylic baby yarn. and someone donated this to church. It is 42, at least 42 inches wide. And yeah. And it is, like I said, it's on size 4 needles. I spent the day working on knitting this while watching TV and under the blankets. And it was very meditative to do that. However, I am about ready to frog this because it's too big. And the finished product, I'm helped along by the fact that I didn't cast this on, and I haven't done nearly in any way most of the work on this. And it's just too big. The finished product is too big. And so I started to think about when to say goodbye to a knitting project. I haven't convinced myself 100% that I'm going to rip this out yet. It can certainly just go back in the bag for a year. But I'm not going to work on it. These other 2 blankets are going to come first. And I may rip it out. But I have been thinking about when to say goodbye to a knitting project. And knowing that we as knitters are artists and we choose what to make and what to finish, and that is a choice as an artist, what you're going to present to yourself and to the world as your finished work is your choice. There's no one out there, unless you're working on commission, and please don't do that. It's just knitting for money never pays enough to make it worth it. I mean, if you love designing and you love selling your patterns, then great, you can do that. But you knit for love. And knitting on commission, I mean, this is not commissioned. And there's no, like I said, there's no police, there's no court out there telling you to finish something. If you decide this is too big, the finished object is too big, you've grown physically over the past 20 years, and the sweater you started 20 years ago no longer fits you, either because it's too big or too small. Or, the thing you started for your kids 5 years ago doesn't fit. I mean, that I've had to frog things, quite a bit of things that I started for one of the younger kids, and pull it out, and I was, I started this for middle child, 6 years ago. It doesn't fit their lifestyle. It doesn't fit their body. It's got to go. Also, if, you may still like the yarn and the pattern's gone out of date, or your knitting skill has improved to the point where you realize, when I was knitting that, it looks like crap and I can do better than that. So I'm going to rip it out and either start over or repurpose the yarn because I can do better. If your skills get better, you can treasure the memory that, this is something very early on when I didn't quite understand, edging or gauge or whatever, but you get better. And so, you're an artist and the yarn is your paint, and your yarn deserves to be knit into something beautiful and useful that brings you happiness. And you picked out that yarn for a reason, and it shouldn't be trapped in a project that makes you unhappy in any way. I saw this somewhere on the internet and I pasted it in here. Your knitting should be your sanctuary, not your sentence. Period. If you, like me, have a little ADHD knitting going on, one of the things you can do is, and I have done this many times, set a timer for 25 minutes, do a Pomodoro, they call them, 25-minute timer, and just knit the thing. If you pulled it out of your closet and it's a UFO and you don't know what you're going to do with it, knit it for 25 minutes, knit it for 15 minutes. Look at the pieces you finished and just knit it for half an hour. Play with it and see how you feel about it. I had a girlfriend who had knit back in the 80s, had knit one of these kind of it wasn't K facet, but it was kind of that Rowan lookbook kind of sweater with intarsia in it. I think it was single ply wool, very colorful. And she found these pieces of knitting in a trunk in her house. And it was stuff that she had knit while she was traveling through China, believe it or not, and had put away. And now she had a kid and she was married and she was this and that. And it was just a completely different point in her life than when she had knit the sweater. And, but she looked at it and it's like, this is almost finished and it looks really good. And so she put it together and she held a champagne toast for her sweater. Because and the purpose she wrote in on the invitation, isn't knitting wonderful? And I'll never forget that, because things sit in our closets and they don't get done. And if you go back and look at it, it might be time to repurpose that yarn. Or you might say, look, I've got 5 more rows to go, or I've just got to sew it together. And I am positive that from the time that she had been, and I don't know whether she was an exchange student or whatever she was, but when she was going on to the train in China knitting the sweater, to the point where she's had a husband and a kid and is older, that her knitting talent improved. And so when she looked at these pieces, she saw, I can do this. I can finish this and I can actually sew it together and make it wearable. And maybe the reason it was in her trunk was she wasn't ready to do that as a skill level. The other thing that I get caught up in, and I'm showing you the square, that's the oddball that I did. Remember that irregularities add character to your project and make them look homemade. And that's not a bad thing. It's hard to admit that. And I know that. You just want to not have something that's not perfect, but you leave a little mistake in there that, like the carpet weavers leave on purpose, put a mistake in their carpet for Allah. I have often said that, there's a stitch that's twisted somewhere in the garment. Well, all right, that's for Allah. I'm not gonna frog down and redo that, because that tells me that I don't have to achieve perfection with every single garment. And if you decide to frog something, that can be painful because you put so much work into it, and ripping out means you failed. And so one knitter suggested creating a ritual about it, that if you're going to rip something out, pour yourself a beverage, put on some music, and think about, while you're ripping it out, everything you learned while you were making this. And maybe revisit, depending how painful it is, revisit the time in your life when you worked on this. And if it's time for it to become something else, celebrate that. And you might also just take a photo of it before you frog it and say, and put it up at Ravelry as I frog this because it no longer suits my life. And you can even, there's a place on Ravelry for notes. Write down make it a little journal about, here's where I was when I knit this and it wasn't right, and I'm repurposing it for another project, and here's the pattern I'm thinking about, but this has to go. And put that little frog up there as an object in your Ravelry library. It's okay to have frogs in there. Frogging isn't failure. Frogging and ripping out and doing something else is a sign that you're growing as a knitter. So we all do. We all grow as knitters. I am going to read to you now from The Yarn Whisperer by Clara Parks. My unexpected life in knitting, and boy, has she had an unexpected life in knitting. I'm I'm just going to read a couple little paragraphs here from the chapter called Outed, O-U-T-E-D, Outed. Halfway through my senior year, and she's talking about college, I finally had the courage to come out as a knitter. Please believe me when I say this was not a popular stance. The previous year, the College Board of Trustees had announced it would make Mills College, where she attended, co-ed, prompting the students to strike, occupy the administrative offices, and effectively shut down the college for 2 weeks. Eventually, Trustee Warren Hellman held a press conference and unfurled a banner, Mills for Women Again. This replaced the earlier banner, which read, Warren, go to hell, man, which he kept until he died. That's a good sport. We were there to break free from the patriarchy, to experience the possibility of a world in which traditional gender roles played no part. We were unleashing our inner CEOs, Tony Award-winning playwrights, confident scientists seeking a cure for AIDS. We marched on campus, we held vigils, we studied angry books by powerful women. We learned to speak up, to question. While we weren't openly discouraged from following the path of our foremothers, the message was there. In the midst of this amazing environment, I held on to a deep, dark secret. Rolled up in a clear plastic bag under my bed was a sweater, robin's egg blue with dolman sleeves, made from an exquisitely crunchy, lanolin-rich yarn from Sweden. The secret was that this sweater was only half finished, and I was the one knitting it. When the going got rough, which it did quite a lot during college, I locked my door, curled up on my bed, pulled out the sweater, and knit a few rows. If anybody knocked, I quickly shoved the sweater under the corners, or under the covers, so they couldn't see it. Let them think it was booze, or a bong, or whatever typical college students were hiding. They say the best way to entice a person out of the closet is to show them someone like them who is living a healthy, happy, open life without fear or shame. That's what happened to me. One day, my friend Emily Jane, 2 years my junior, and 3 doors down from me in the dorm, showed up with a sock in her hand, a knitted sock, on 4 DPNs, whose heel she was in the process of turning. She was carrying it out in the open where everyone could see. There was no self-consciousness or even self-awareness about it. She was just turning a heel. Before I could stop myself, I blurted out, I knit too! Our mutual friend Hilaire chimed in, I'm working on an embroidered pillowcase right now. What are you guys talking about? Asked Jenny, my oldest and dearest friend at Mills, who lived a few doors up in the opposite direction. Crafty stuff, Hilaire smiled. Emily Jane is making a sock, I said, watching Jen's face closely for signs of shock or disapproval. Cool, she said. I can't knit, but I do crochet. I've been making an Afghan for my Nana. Wait, what? And so quite suddenly, and without warning, we were all out in the open, discovering much too late that we each shared a quiet passion for making or adorning fabric by hand. You know what they say, out one day, marching in a parade, and the next. Naturally, we needed to proselytize, but how? We all worked as receptionists for our dorm. Most of us didn't have bigger plans on Saturday nights, so we'd usually go down to the lobby and keep whoever was working company. We decided to use this time for the Saturday night crafters, dragging our projects out of hiding, plunking ourselves on the mustard-colored couches in the dorm living room, and proudly stitching away. That is from The Yarn Whisperer by Clara Parks. Outing. Don't forget that starting next Monday is Knit a Second Sock. We'll be knitting a second sock all week, and it's an 8-day week. I always make it the last 8 days of the week to give you an extra day. But and give me an extra day. So knit a second sock starting next Monday, the 24th. And I will see you next Wednesday. Thanks. Bye.
On Wednesdays at 7, sharp as can be, blue gals calling, come knit with me.